It's exactly 11 a.m. So for us to have more time, we shall now start our webinar for today. Firstly, I am Dr. Lalrinsani, Assistant Professor in the Department of English. And today, on behalf of Women's Cell, NSS, and the Department of English, Government Serchhip College, I extend a very warm welcome to our respected resource person, Dr. Easterine Kire, and to all the teachers and students who are attending our program. First of all, International Women's Day is observed every year on March 8 to honor the achievements of women from all areas of life. So today is a very important day to remind ourselves once again about women's accomplishments, be it outside or within the home, and to raise awareness regarding gender bias. So International Women's Day 2022 campaign theme is Gender Equality for a Sustainable Tomorrow and Break the Bias. So today, once again, the aim and purpose of celebrating Women's Day is to imagine a gender equal world, a world free of bias, a world free of stereotypes, a world that is diverse, a world that is inclusive, and a world where difference is valued and celebrated. So however, we have to remind ourselves that this call for equality cannot be initiated by women alone. Hence, International Women's Day calls for a campaign that includes everyone saying, together we can forge women's equality, and collectively we can break the bias. So the United Nations also recognize the contribution of women and girls who are leading the way to build a sustainable future for tomorrow, and hence the theme, gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. Now, I would like to introduce our resource person for today. We are extremely privileged to have one of India's most renowned female authors, Dr. Easterine Kire. We can say that she is one of our own, as she is originally from our sister state, Nagaland. She is a poet and an author who currently lives in northern Norway. And a little bit about her schooling. She did her schooling in Kohima, her undergraduate study in Shillong, followed by a course in journalism in Delhi. And she also has a PhD in English literature from Savitribai Phule Pune University. It can be rightly said that Dr. Easterine Kire, has pioneered the modern literary culture of Nagaland. The majority of her writings are based in the lived realities of the people in Nagaland in Northeast India. In 1982, she published Kelhu Kevira, I hope I pronounced that right, which is the very first book of poems in English by a writer from Nagaland. In 2003, she published A Naga Village Remembered, which was republished in 2018 as Sky is My Father. And this book was another landmark as it was the first novel from Nagaland. In 2013, Bitter Wormwood was shortlisted for the Hindu Prize, which she later won for another book, When the River Sleeps. Her recent novel, Son of the Thundercloud, won both Bal Sahitya Puraskar of the Sahitya Academy and the 2017 Tata Literature Life Book of the Year Award. Without further ado, I would now hand over the time to Dr. Easterine Kire to start her talk.
Thank you, Dr. Lalrin, for that very impressive introduction. And for me, it's a pleasure to be with you all here. And I see that on social media and on emails, people are wishing each other for International Women's Day. But I'd like to wish you all very good Humans Day, because we shouldn't. I've been told that we shouldn't celebrate only for one day. We should celebrate for 365 days. In that case, we should celebrate it every day as Women's Day, Men's Day, Youth Day, Children's Day, and Day for the Elderly. We should just celebrate humanity. So with that, with that introduction, I just want to get started on the talk. I've done a talk with Dr. Ralte's college, and I won't be talking very long. But thank you for the invitation. And at the outset, I want to say that I'm not a gender activist, I'm not a feminist, so I'll be talking about other things. Um, However, the topic about gender inequality leading to a sustainable environment, it made me wonder about women leaders, and I wanted to get some feedback on women leaders. Can you hear me all right? Should I talk louder?
Yes, you are audible, ma'am. You are
Okay,
audible.
okay, yeah. And I asked around, and a friend mentioned Deborah. Deborah, who was the female judge who led Israel. He said she was a good leader, and also mentioned that women step in when men are weak or unfit. In that historical time, Israel was guilty of idol worship. And in the book of Isaiah, God even said he would make women and children rulers. So there's a reversal in God's pattern of doing things when nature as he designed it is out of joint. Um, Something that might interest you is that Norway, some few years ago, very recently, was led by a government with three, four prominent women leaders, and the prime minister was a woman, Erna Solberg. She led the Conservative Party, and the feedback was that Erna, the prime minister, was good, but she was in the wrong party. So this is feedback from many people. And what the party did wrong was cut the culture budgets. So many artists and musicians, writers, all leading an artistic career suffered very greatly from this. Then their immigration policy was criticized, etc. And commenting on that, a male observer said, women quotas, they don't really solve anything if the women are incompetent. So instead of waiting for a quota for women, actually, women should become competent without trying to become men. So it's not necessary for women to become men, just become competent, just become good at what you're doing. So yeah, that's my little bit towards your theme, your topic for today. I want to say that gender, what I know about gender is that gender roles in the 21st century have become very blurred. Women, if you want to say they have progressed, okay, we can say that because they can do what they want, they can be what they want. They've entered the male domain and they're excelling there in different jobs that were previously done only by men. But then, apart from that, the whole idea of gender is being further blurred by the gender movements in the West. And these gender movements from the West, especially in North America, are voraciously picked up by a minority in India. Um, so one gets tired of gender topics and gender activism because it's always confrontational. And when it's confrontational, anything that's confrontational is suspect, and we should question it. So today, what I really want to talk about is questioning narratives. I think we don't question narratives enough, and many narratives are originating in the West, and India is just picking up. And I want to say, as a person from the Northeast, that the Northeast cannot be viewed with the same lens that is used for India. What is true for India is not always true for the Northeast. And then we can go further and say that what is applicable or relevant for Mizoram is not necessarily applicable for Meghalaya, etc. So, because of this, we should question narratives and we should decide, we should choose and pick, not just accept them blindly. Um, I also want to say that there's so many different narratives that are regularly being generated by the literary world. And recently we were discussing marginalization because that's another narrative, and we have we are encouraged to, or not encouraged, this is imposed on us, that we are to view ourselves, we in the Northeast are to view ourselves through the marginalized lens, and to consider ourselves marginalized. And also, there has been a rallying cry to join the mainstream. All our lives, we've heard that, haven't we? We should question it. You should question all these narratives. Is it an option for us? I think we really have to consider that. And for me, I always become suspicious, because to me it sounds like a cry to join the mainstream, join the mainstream. It sounds like a cry to tone down our cultural identities, tone down our beautiful cultural identities, and integrate with the rest of India. Deep inside me, I always ask, okay, if we integrate, will they remove the AFSPA, the armed forces? Is it us? It's not always the best for us. And we need to recognize that we are our own centers. We've discussed this in Mizoram, in Aizawl, 5 years ago, in 2018, that, and we agreed that we are our own centers. We are not marginalized. Where we are our centers. We don't have to run towards some imaginary center. And Goa also, the audience in Goa agrees to that. The audiences in Sikkim agrees to that. So all the territories that are considered as peripheries, or are defined as the margins, actually don't see themselves as margins, and should not really, because it's up to us to accept the definition or not. So I just want to reiterate, we should not blindly accept any definition, and we should not think we're lesser, that we're marginalized, etc. Just because we are at a geographical distance from Delhi, we're not. We should question every theory that comes in or that's blown in by the wind. We should question, we should investigate it and see if it is relevant. And if it's not relevant, we don't need to accept it. Then I want to talk also about our originality, because that is what we have in great big packages in the Northeast. Go to every state, each one is so original. Each clan, each tribe, beautiful cultures and the variations, they show how original the God is who created all this. And the Bible also tells us that we created as originals. We don't have to compare ourselves with other people. We don't have to be, we're not Xeroxes, we are originals. We are asli, we're not nakli. So then our cultures are unique and peculiar to the region. And then we can't use the same formula for the Northeast, which is for the whole of the Northeast. We can't apply the same formula. And let alone the whole of India. We are created creative. I'll just repeat that. We are created creative. And each individual is so gifted. But man had a plan, and man's plan is a 9 to 5 job. It's a house, a car, or maybe 2 cars, a family. But God's plan is so much more than that. It's so much more than sitting in front of a PC all day and getting back and neck problems. And it's important for us to again look at the problem of being defined by others. Gender inequality is not your problem, but your problem or our problem is accepting the narratives that others have given us. that others have imposed on us. When the UGC sends out one theme for everyone, um, one theme for Women's Day, it just sort of homogenizes all the geographical areas. Don't allow that. Don't just accept that meekly, because we are not homogeneous societies, and we should try our best to let our originality stand out. The problem here is that we are oral societies in transition, and we have problems that we've not acknowledged properly. We were all defined by others because we were oral societies. We did not have written histories about us, about ourselves at one point of time. So we were defined by our occupiers, and we continue to be defined. And then we began to define ourselves by their definitions. So that has led to many other problems, and that has led to us accepting narratives that are not right for us. And then it made us vulnerable to being stereotyped and labeled and primitivized, and our literature has suffered from this problem because our literature, when it goes outside, our writing is primitivized, it is simplified, and it's categorized. So, and the other thing is that there's an expectation from us when we write, whether you're writing as a journalist or you're writing as a literary writer, there's there has been an artificial identity imposed on the Northeast region. So Northeast writers are expected to write about the violence. Everyone wants to hear about the violence in the Northeast, the conflict in the Northeast. And for a long time, we've fought against that stereotype because that is not us. That's not who we are. Violence does happen, but that it's not a daily feature of our lives. So these stereotypes that have been constructed, these are the artificial identities for the Northeast, and they will continue as long as the artificial identities will continue to be imposed on us, as long as we continue to accept it. And the gist of my talk today is, let's not blindly accept majority narratives. When they're not relevant for us, why accept it? Create our own narratives. Let us choose our own narratives. Let us take authority over our own narratives, over what how we want our stories to be projected, how we want our stories to be written, and how we want our stories to be known. Yes, thank you very much. I think I'll stop there. Thank you again.
We are immensely grateful to Dr. Easterine Kire for a very insightful talk. I must add that the talk was not centered not only on women's issues, but it was a talk that extended to the topic of narratives, of identity, the theme of marginalization, of definition. And we thank you for breaking and deconstructing our topic for Women's Day. It was a very, very insightful discussion. I think we have time. We have a lot of time for discussion. I would like to invite questions or any type of comment from our teachers who are present and also from the students as well. I think at one point in our lives, we have all been victims of, stereotypes. So I would also like to invite questions regarding that context. In order to initiate the discussion, I would just like to ask one question to our resource person. In the context of Northeast India, how do we question narrative, especially as women? Do we have the means? Do we have the intellect? Do we have the sources that is needed to question narrative? How do we start? That simple question, since you were talking about problematization of identity and definition, problematizing narrative. So how do we go about, how do we start questioning narrative? Do we have the sources that is available in the context of Northeast India?
I think our greatest enemy has been homogenization because the rest of India homogenizes us, and uh, the people guilty or the groups guilty of doing that are the media houses. Then, yes, first the media houses, then the masses have accepted that. So, projecting the Northeast as one homogeneous region just because all of us look alike and use our creativity to be heard. That's one thing we can do. Use our music, which we have been doing. Wonderful music groups from Mizoram, from other states. We've been doing that. So we are heard musically. Let our musicians carry the message out, the message of our difference. I think difference is a wonderful thing. We should not try to copy others, but we should really look inside, look inside at what gift God has placed inside us as an original, and bring that out. Because that's not difficult. Copying somebody is difficult, but being your best self is not difficult. It just needs a little concentration, a little time alone. Yeah, and I think that's applicable to all fields of art. And that is where we are blessed.
Okay. Any other question from our audience?
Ma'am, I have one question.
Okay, we have a question from one of our students, Joel Vanluteka.
Hello.
How far does gender inequality according to your no sorry far how
You
far
could
does
write
gender
it down
inequality according
because
to your opinion affect global changes like climate change global challenges like climate change because women are more affected and vulnerable toward this aspect.
can you write it down in the chat because I can't hear properly?
Joel, is it possible for you to write it down in the chat, or maybe you can repeat the question?
I'll just write down on the chat, miss.
Yeah, yeah, please, because it was breaking up.
I would like to invite other students or maybe teachers. If you have any question, if you are reluctant to turn on your video or post a question from your side, you can type it in the chat box.
Yeah.
Ma'am, the question is there in the chat box. Are you
Mhm.
able to access it?
It's- yeah. I think, Joel, I think I made it clear in the beginning, or I didn't make it clear in this session that I'm not a climate change activist. I'm not an activist of any sort. And these kinds of questions, I don't feel I have the expertise to answer. So I can direct you to some links, but I don't want to answer this question because only in a very general way can we answer it. That yes, wars happen and women receive the brunt of it, and women in India are the ones who have to go out looking for water in drought places created by climate change. All those general things are there, which we all know. But this is a question I'm still asking. How far does gender inequality affect um, affect global challenges? Let's find the answer together. Then the next question, how can we stop the confrontation caused by the question of inequality? Okay, so most of the questions are centered around gender inequality. When I use the word confrontation, It was more in the context of, the gender movements in the West, where young males are identifying as women, as female, and they are uh, entering into women's toilets and women's locker rooms. That kind of blurring of gender roles and blurring of gender. And when when I use the word confrontation, I was also talking about activism, which is very confrontational, which imposes its views on the majority, or on other people, in order to make them agree with them. So that kind of confrontation.
I hope the answer is clear. Um, any other question from our participants?
Ma'am, I would like to ask a single question. Um, First of all, I would like to state that I admired your statement regarding writing our own narrative and identity, and putting that statement in the context of Mizo society, where the majority of organizations have a profound influence in the formation and perception of gender equality and gender issues in Mizo society. So that is my question.
Zara, can you write it down? I missed the last part because your audio was not clear.
Yes, Dr. Zara, there was a slight technical glitch from your side. So if you can please write down the question in the chat box.
Okay, I'll drop it in the chat box.
Mhm. You know, you're asking where did we go wrong, and when you suggest that we have there's something, there's a failure in our
Ma'am, I
cultures,
think
then
this is another question which has been
okay, okay,
posted by another student, a female student. I think Dr. Zara
okay,
is still writing his
still rating. Yeah,
yes writing his
fine.
question.
Then we'll wait for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
ma'am. In the meantime, if you can address this question.
Okay. Actually, I didn't expect to answer questions on gender inequality because I didn't really talk about that. But your question, when you use the word, where did we go wrong? It suggests that there has been a fail somewhere, a failure. And then it's important to investigate our cultures, because this is limited to our society. You're asking a question about a failure in our society. So it's time to do that, time to investigate our culture. And are we practicing our cultures in the right manner, or have we perverted that? Because when there is a wrong, when there's a fail, that means there has been a perversion somewhere. Okay, I hope I made myself clear. And many things can pervert culture. People can abuse the system, and we know that people continually do that, especially those with a strong personality can abuse the culture, abuse the system, and then it becomes a tool to abuse women. So do that. Investigate your culture. All of us, all of us. Okay, Dr. Zara, thank you for your question. Okay, I really have very little knowledge of civil society organizations in Mizoram. Uh, okay, I can talk a little about Nagaland, where right now, we are having a big debate about lifting prohibition, because people want to lift prohibition. There has been really no benefit from prohibition. What happened was, adulterated alcohol came in, flooded the market, although there was prohibition, and the sale of smuggled goods enriched some people. And we've lost so many of our men aged 30 to 40 from who have been drinking adulterated alcohol. So, what I want to say from there is that, is this being recorded? If this is being recorded, I'll get into trouble. But I just have to say that sometimes civil societies and churches don't always take good decisions. We have destroyed a whole generation of our society by prohibition. So instead of making people stop drinking, many turn into alcoholics because suddenly they thought alcohol was no longer available, and they increased their amount, and then we've had families just fractured, broken by alcoholism. So, I think we should not give so much authority to public bodies to decide which direction we are to go. And I speak that from a Naga perspective, because I can't speak from a Mizo perspective, and I don't have the knowledge or the expertise. But I hope that helps you, Dr. Sarah.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
I'm just speaking personally, okay? But a lot of my friends also agree.
Okay, I would like to thank our resource person once again, Dr. Easterine Kire, for being extremely open, for being honest, and for taking your time to address all the questions. Although I know that you were not comfortable with all the questions on gender inequality, however, you took time, to present it your way. And we thank you so much for making our Women's Day worthwhile. I will now call upon the head of Department of English, Ms. Vandal Liani, to carry on with the vote of thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Insani. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, you
Yeah.
are.
Okay, so today we gather here for the celebration of International Women's Day, and as we now have reached to the end of this beautiful event, I, on behalf of the Women's Cell, the Department of English, and the NSS Unit Government Serchhip College, would like to thank Madam Easterine for sparing us her valuable time to talk on issues related to gender. And so there are still so many places in the world, so many questions in our country and even in our society where women are exploited, let alone unequal regarding the opposite gender. And so my huge thanks also go to all the women involved in making this program a success, who support other women who are working for the welfare of women. And today I would like to say that we need more support for spreading awareness regarding women empowerment. I would like to thank all the participants for your valuable feedback and interest as you have joined this session, and let us try our best and continue to support each other. And on this note, I would like to conclude today's event, and I hope that this day will bring a new fire in our soul for fighting for women's rights. So thank you, Madam Misterin, and I wish you all a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, ma'am.